Hey guys, I want to stay in the Hell Leonard for just a little bit while we're reading our notes here. This should be a daily exercise for you, reading your notes on page 6, doing the exercises on page 7, getting good on page 8 where you're learning the B string, and so on. If those pages are getting really easy and you can name the notes really well, play through that with no problem at all. You don't have to keep returning to them, but keep adding on the new material, playing for about 5 to 10 minutes a day, even just in your note reading if you can. I've actually had parents tell me at times that their son or daughter doesn't have enough to practice because they're finished in 2 minutes. That's not the idea, of course, just to run through everything once and then say you're done. The idea is to sit on something and get good at it. In those cases, those students weren't getting a lot of homework because every time I played with them, their level had stagnated and we hadn't really gotten anywhere. So I had to review what they had done, polish it up a little bit, and only give them a small amount of homework because I was seeing that the homework they were doing wasn't really getting accomplished. My presumption being they were practicing and not advancing very well, the truth being that they really weren't practicing at all. I'd actually rather not even call it practice. I wish it were just play. I wish that we could sit down and play these songs and enjoy them and love the guitar for what it is, the very reason we picked it up in the first place, and go through it and enjoy the process of putting these things together. But we're just not like that. The repetition sometimes will look like work for us and we don't want to do it. We just want to find that magic time where we can already play really well. What you have to do is find your own motivation in the work you're doing. We often say that we should do what we love, but the truth is that we love what we do. We're designed that when we take on a project, it becomes the thing we enjoy. Give somebody some golf clubs and they head out to the range for the first time and come home addicted. They can't think of anything else but getting out and playing golf. Or you give a person a dart set and suddenly they're addicted to playing darts every night. The same goes with your video games. If we weren't doing it, we wouldn't be motivated to do it some more. Our brains love some of that routine. They love getting back to the things they've been working on, and we love to get that feedback as we improve at it. So you want to do that with your guitar. Schedule times to do it. You can't expect the motivation to come on its own or the inspiration. Every day something will get in the way if you don't actually set time aside and make it the thing you do. I wasn't actually going to talk about that right now, and we'll get to that a little bit more in the future. What I want to do here is run through Au Clair de la Lune, which is page 13 in most of your books. You'll see that there are actually 8 lines of music there. I want to point out to you that you don't play all 8. The first line of music is numbered 1, and it's attached to another stave numbered 2. That's for accompaniment. You don't do 1 and 2, then go to the next, do 1 and 2. In every pair of lines, you do the top one, numbered 1. So you'll end up with this material played once where it's numbered 1, then you skip the line that says 2, play this material again on the second set, play this material, and then the last line is this again. As we noted with Ode to Joy, that's a hymn format. This material played twice, a new section, and back. This is A, B, and A. As with all your songs, I prefer that you spend time reading the notes here first. Read them off to yourself. C, 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 D, E, D, C, E, D, D, C. The next line says the same thing. Third line, D, 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 A, D, C, B, A, G. I just noticed that I forgot to color in my notes, so I'll be paused here for a second while I change that. Here the notes are marked in again. The colored in ones are quarter notes. You see it takes 4 of them to fill a bar because they get 1 beat each. And you count them 1, 2, 3, 4 in 4/4 music. This 4 tells us that every bar or every measure has 4 beats. Left to right again. I want to review these things all the time. You should be reviewing it too. This is your treble clef. You play 1 measure or 1 bar of music. You get to the bar line. You have another 4 beats. These notes that aren't colored in but have stems clearly are sharing the bar. They're splitting up the 4 beats so they get half of them each. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're half notes. More quarter notes, and then a whole note at the end of the bar. Obviously it gets all 4 because it's alone, but you want to recognize the whole note as being not colored in and not having a stem. While you're naming notes, a lot of these are very familiar now. Some of the new ones, the G and A, might not be, as you're naming them. And we get down here and we see the stem now going up. You can recognize your A note. If you didn't recognize it right away, I might put an antenna on it, ask you what it is. You recognize it's the ant, A for ant. There he is again. This one looks a little better because it's colored in. And we end on our G. That's the lowest note we're using right now. On that very same page, I would often write in your little guitar diagram showing you Eddie 8 Dynamite, Goodbye Eddie, all your open strings, and then the notes that we're using here. We have G and A on the 3rd string. You practice that last time, playing G's and A's, and then B, C, and D on the next. You can draw this yourself. The more often you draw it, the better you're going to remember it. This time I want to play the chords as well. They're still marked in gray, so they're not expecting you to know these. That's the teacher's job to play them. But I like students to be prepared, and in this song we've already got these chords mastered, so we can use them as accompaniment ourselves. Here's your little version of C, G7, and D7. As I said, when you encounter this song, the book doesn't expect you to know chords at all. So these little versions will do if that's what you're playing. Very likely it is at this point, because we're going to get to this page in note reading fairly early. If you've expanded these chords already to their full versions, then you can use those. I'll show you what those will look like. The C, as we've learned elsewhere, is this diagonal chord now. We had our little C, we got to an A minor, and then we took that chord and used it to build the C chord. The pointer is an anchor, it stays where it is. The middle finger is an anchor on the 4th string. The 3rd finger comes off the 3rd string and goes to the 5th string. So A minor and C. I describe that as one of your diagonal chords. The G7 we haven't learned yet in this version. You had this little G, and we learned we could put these notes on the bottom of it. We had a little G7. We can put those notes on the bottom of that as well. We're on the 1st string with your 1st finger on the 1st fret. You reach all the way down to the 6th string, 3rd fret with your ring finger, and your middle finger will catch that same 5th string 2nd fret note that it did in G. This might be too big for you at this point. If it is, stay with the little chords. If you're working on these though, notice this nice confluence of events here. You take your C, you move the pointer up to the 1st string, you move these fingers down 1 string each to the 5th and 6th, increasing that diagonal shape. So I think of this as telescoping. You take the C chord and you stretch out the ends. The low fingers go lower, the high finger goes higher, and you have your G7. So you can put these together. A little closer together, strum 5 strings for C, spread them out, 6 strings for G7. Collapse them to C, spread them to G7. Notice again the type of motion you would like to work toward in the future. You don't throw a C chord away and then build your G7 one at a time. Then throw that away and look at your picture of C and work that chord out one at a time. You'd like to get all those fingers moving together. We'll work on practices to get there. Don't feel bad if right now, when you release a chord, your fingers scatter. That's what they'll do. Your muscles aren't used to staying in this shape right now, so they flee away and you'll have to come back and rebuild, but try to be aware of it. You can work toward moving these notes one at a time out of each chord into the next. One at a time isn't our goal, but it's way better than coming and rebuilding from scratch. We'll get onto the song now and try to end this fairly quickly this time. The C chord is being strummed in the background. It's coinciding with C notes, but as you've seen before, these two are not necessarily correlated in that one-to-one manner. Just because it's a C note doesn't mean it's a C chord, and vice versa. We'll count to 4 and give this a play. 1, 2, 3, 4. C's, D, longer E, longer D. C, E, D, D. That C at the end is 4 beats. You'll be on to your second line of this. The way I think of a song is, well, that second line is the same material, so I'm just going to play this again in my head. Even though I'm looking at the second line, I know I don't have to work out new material. We've been playing on C's. We saw this in Ode to Joy, where the next part moves to a different note. This one moves up to D's and down to A. That will be a hard move for you. This is cool, it's a scale. D, C, B, A, G. Now you're on the fourth line, which to me is back to the beginning idea. C, E, D, D, C. D's and A's are hard to play. Make that one of your practices in preparing this song. Hold an A and get to the D. Notice I can shift my wrist a little bit to get to a nice D. Or I can turn my hand to reach it. D, A, D, A. I am lifting each one a little bit. It's uncomfortable to hold them both, but you could do some time where you're practicing that to get your hand shaped toward it. That motion of D to A is a very popular one, so you do want to get a hold of it right away. Also, recognizing that scale is very helpful. When reading through this with a student, I might stop them there and have them see that. Going in reverse, you're going up the scale. G, A, B, C, D, just as we've practiced a lot, hopefully, when you're learning your notes on your guitar. So we could go G, A, B, C, D, and back. That could be an exercise to prepare for this. Alerting yourself that that's all this is will help you in your reading. Playing chords here, you'll notice in your first bar you have a C chord. That's going to get your 4 beats. The next bar doesn't show a chord right away. That means it's still C, but halfway through the bar it switches to G7. So you get 4 C's in this bar, 2 more in this bar, 2 G7s, 2 C's, 2 G7s, and 4 C's at the end. They don't write a new chord in every bar if it's the same chord. D7, for instance, is played in 3 different bars. It will get 4 beats and 4 beats and 4 beats. That's a total of 12, of course, and I will have you tell me that sometimes, but you don't want to count to 12. You want to count to 4, count to 4, and count to 4. So here are the chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. C, 2 more, and G7. 2 more C's, 2 G7s, and 4 C's. The next line of music, 4 C's, 2 more, with 2 G7s, 2 C's, 2 G7s, 4 C's. Third line of music goes to D7s. This is the second bar of that, and the third bar, then the G7. Listen to that tension taking me back to my C's. 2 more, 2 G7s, 2 C's, 2 G7s. In these exercises, I often will end with 1 strum just to accompany that 1 long note. Just at the end of the song, I would do that. So you and I together would sound something like this. And you can play along if you've got the speed up already. 1, 2, 3, 4. C, D, E, D, C, E, D, D, C, 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 D, E, D, C, E, D, D, C. Now the D7 line, D's to an A note, D coming down the scale to a G7 chord, and last line is C's again, which looks just like the first line. When I slow down at the end, that's called a ritardando. And I do that a lot. You don't have to in your own practice. You can stay on beat. Keep that time steady. If you're playing with a metronome, you'll be locked in anyway. It just feels a little bit more like the song is finished when we do that. Speaking of finished, hopefully I've wound this down in good time, and this will be a good addition to your practice. Have fun and keep on playing. See you later.